Welcome everyone to another edition of Get Your Game On, the channel dedicated to immersive gaming experiences. So I recently returned from Flight Sim Expo 2024 and it was busy. Most of you may know that I actually helped DOF Reality at their booth. We got, I think it was over 130 people through our H3 simulator over the course of 2 days, and it was madness. Needless to say, I didn't have hardly any time to actually go out and roam the show floor and actually get to test things. But there were two items that were on my absolute have-to list. One of them was the Somnium VR1, and the other one was the YAW 3. And I have to thank both companies because they were generous enough to allow me to get an exclusive interview and time on the units prior to the show opening. So that was the only time I had to do anything other than run the DOF Reality booth. So what we're going to talk about today is my thoughts and feelings on the YAW 3. And I know a lot of people have asked me about the YAW 3 in the past, so here we go. You finally get what you've been asking for. You'll finally get at least my impressions on the YAW 3. One of the most interesting motion platforms that I've seen in quite a while. Now, if you've been a fan of the YAW series, you know the first one was like a salad bowl. I had absolutely no interest in that. But when the YAW 2 came out, it got my attention. I was looking at that and going, okay, this is interesting. And now the YAW 3 is basically a refined version of the YAW 2. And I think the thing that intrigued me the most about this platform is its ability to pitch backwards, because that's the one sensation I know on the H6 when I first got it and we had the old gearboxes and before we did all our modifications, I would pitch back and it was lacking a little. I wanted a little bit more. I felt like it needs to go just a little bit more. And I can assure you, you have no issues with that in the YAW 3. This thing will set you on your back, and it was probably the coolest experience. And my mind was just imagining being in the F-18, going vertical, and feeling that full back pitch and how amazing that would be. So that aspect of it did not disappoint. I was really, really thrilled. So let me tell you a little bit about how the experience went. So YAW VR on Saturday, we're only doing a roller coaster experience. So it wasn't interactive. You basically sat in the rig and they ran you through a roller coaster experience. So that's what I initially tried. And basically, it was cool, but it was more like being on an amusement ride. So if you've never done this, you were probably awed and amazed. Being a little bit more of a VR veteran and certainly a motion platform veteran, I was kind of like, well, this is nice, but it's not giving me what I want to know. Because I wasn't sure, I couldn't tell if the cogging, I felt like some stuttering, but it could have been the butt kicker because there was a butt kicker on it, or it might have been built into the experience because I was on a roller coaster. So I felt a lot of kind of jerking and stuff from time to time, and I really was trying to get a feel for the smoothness of the unit. So after that experience, I asked Zold if he would actually just run me through like a calibration setup, or just move the platform independent of any kind of game or any VR experience. I just wanted to focus on the motions of the platform. And from what I could tell, it felt pretty good. I kind of felt like I felt some stuttering or cogging here and there, but I'm not 100% sure. I didn't have enough time with it, and the majority of it was pretty smooth. Being able to move back and pitch was amazing. I felt the roll was lacking a little bit. It didn't feel like it rolled as much as what I'm used to in the H6, but it was enough that you certainly got the sensation. And then they were heavy on the yaw. Obviously, it's YAW VR. They were heavy on the yaw rotation, and to be honest, that got a little old because I'm not as interested in the yaw movement. It does play a part, but they almost focus on it too much, in my opinion, because in an aircraft, you're not going to primarily be yawing. Now, the exception to that is a helicopter, which I think might be a perfect use case for this motion platform. If you're a helicopter pilot, this could be a great motion platform for you, especially if they get the heave module worked out. So Zolt confirmed that they've put the heave module development on hold while they developed from the YAW 2 to the YAW 3. But now that the YAW 3 is up and going, they're talking about getting that heave module done again. I think once that heave module is done, I think this could be a really, really interesting solution for some of you helicopter pilots out there, because once you get that heave, that's really going to give you that nice sensation of when you touch down on the ground. Speaking of that, one of the other things that I noticed about using the YAW 3 I didn't really care for the Footbox. It was a little too flat for me, and it felt more like I was in a Formula One or a Indy 500 car type situation versus being in a cockpit. I would have liked to have that Footbox to be bent just a little bit more so it felt more like a cockpit to me instead of a race car. Now the problem you have, the more you bring that Footbox down, then you start running into interference with the floor. So I don't know if you could really get away with it in the current YAW 3, but once that heave module is an option and you get that off the floor a little bit more, I think that could be a really, really cool option. Other things that I noticed about it, we did get a chance to do some flight. So on Sunday, Zolt told me that they were going to get the Cessna 152 demo going where we could actually fly the aircraft. And so I came back at the end of the day and jumped in it and took the Cessna for a little spin. And it was interesting. So you'll notice in the video here, what I don't think I like, if you see the way this tray is mounted, it's a center stick coming up from the middle. Well, back to the helicopter pilots. If you're a helicopter pilot or you're a center stick pilot, that tray is not going to work for your controls. You know, obviously you need to have all that room for your cyclic or your control stick, whatever you need. But Zolt did point out that there is the ability to mount, there's some mounting points on the side of the chair, so you could do some side mounting stuff there. So I think that would be okay, but I'd really like to get a little bit more involved with the mounting options. I think that might be a limit as well, but I don't know for sure. And there is at least some options or some mounting points that you should be able to fabricate something to make your HOTAS system work. So the other thing I was concerned with was if you watch this video where I'm flying, you'll notice there's a lot of cords now that are coming out of the back that are all your yoke and your rudder pedals. So I don't know how that'll work with the 360. I think you're going to have to limit your rotation. You're not going to be able to do a 360 rotation like in a helicopter if you've got a HOTAS on this thing. At least I don't see how that'll work. Now, Zolt did confirm with me that you can limit how far the yaw travels. For those of you that are in a limited space, you don't have a lot of room, you can limit that to how much it will yaw, so you don't need the full 360 room to spin. I think he said it was about a 6-foot span. So on the rotation, you're probably looking, I'd say you'd probably want about at least 9 feet if you're trying to do the full rotation. I'm just guessing at that. So hopefully there's a solution for that where you can have your HOTAS and still be able to do your 360 rotation. So overall, I am so glad I got to go and experience the YAW 3. It's something I've wanted to do for years, and it was on my absolute hit list of who I wanted to talk to while I was in Vegas at the Flight Sim Expo. So Zolt did mention to me that he thinks once they get a little more production underway, he would be willing to send me a unit for review. If he did that, that would be very helpful because then I can put this thing through the paces. I can get in DCS and fly the fighter, and I can get a really good sense of how quick it moves, how fast it moves, all that stuff versus the Cessna. I mean, it was pretty gradual because you're in a Cessna 152. I'd like to put this thing through its paces when I'm in a fighter. Now, what I can tell you is I did think that the unit suffered a little bit from a stability standpoint. I noticed that. First of all, the chair was a little small for me, so I didn't feel really secured in there. I kind of held on when he cranked it up because he said, "How much power do you want me to put to it?" I said, "Turn it up. Let's see what it's got." So he put it to 40%, and I held on and I went for the ride. And it was cool, but it definitely felt a little. I didn't feel as secure in it as I do in my H6. And the other issue I had, or that I felt, was it felt like the unit had a really hard time arresting its momentum. So whenever it would move quickly, it would stop and kind of be really jarring stop. And it just felt like it couldn't arrest the momentum of the unit as it was moving around. And I've never felt that in this. So that was something I was thinking if that could be tuned out through software, possibly, but I can't think of anything in SRS. That might be something that could be adjusted in the firmware that's actually controlling the motors. But I took notice pretty quickly that it felt pretty abrupt when it was moving one way and tried to stop or tried to come back. It didn't feel smooth and natural like this one does. So that was something else that I took from it. But Again, I think that's something that can be tweaked probably through either software or firmware. So we'll see when we get down the road. If I do get the test unit, then I'll obviously be able to test that in more vigor and really see what it does. That's about it. The only other thing that I really noticed after I got back and was watching the video replay, I think you're going to either have to get a real heavy base plate for this, or you're going to have to stake it to the floor. You're going to have to either bolt it, screw it down. You're going to have to find some way to mount this unit to the floor wherever you want it. Because I noticed on the replays, the base was moving. So as he was spinning me and doing that stuff, and I'll show that to you here, you can see the base is kind of moving and sliding on its own. Now what that does, it takes away some of the momentum from what you're feeling because it's being wasted on moving the base around. And that's also going to mean that this thing might move around your room and could very easily move you to a point where you're going to whack into like the desk or a TV or something. So I think this thing's going to be it's going to be necessary to mount it if you're going to run this thing at a really high level. Either that or you just have a ton of space around you. But that's my other thing that I kind of took from this overall experience. It was a really cool format, and I am actually optimistic about where they could take it. And I think it's a great addition to the sim and motion platform market. I think it's going to fill a niche for certain pilots that are looking for that. So again, I really want to thank Zolt and the full YAW VR team. I was so appreciative of them being willing to stop their setup process and spend some time with me and let me really get my feet wet in the YAW VR world. And it was definitely worthwhile. I think it's a viable product. I think it's definitely one to watch. There are still some growing pains potentially, but if you've had an interest in the YAW 3, I didn't feel anything that I think would be a deal breaker that'd be like, no, you absolutely don't want it. So I'm anxious to see how they progress. I'm anxious to see how the system develops, and I'm real anxious to see if they get that heave module done. So we'll see what happens down the road. I did speak to Zolt a little bit about the deliveries. I know that they had some issues, I think, last year, and I know that some people are concerned with, maybe their financial viability and all that. What Zolt told me was, he said if they were going to go out of business, last year would have been the year because there were so many challenges. He said he feels like they've cleared that hurdle, and so for him, he feels like now, having survived last year, he feels that the company's on a forward trajectory that should be improving as time moves forward. So hopefully that alleviate anybody out there. I know there's still a lot of Kickstarters that are waiting to get even their original deal, and Zolt said they're dedicated and they're focused on trying to get those out. So if you guys are in the queue, just a little bit longer, wait a little bit longer, and I know that they're doing their best to get the units out to you. So so that's all the information I have for you on the YAW 3. I hope you guys found this video informative and useful. And if you did, obviously give me a thumbs up, make sure you subscribe. And if you want to help support the channel, there's always that super thanks button down below. That really helps us out as well. So stay tuned. We're going to also cover the Somnium VR1, and I'll give you my thoughts on that. And until then, remember to get your game on.